Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I am filming my March TBR, which I'm very excitingly filming in February. So go me, that's progress. I am sat on the floor to film this video because behind you, not that you can see it, but behind you, there are bags everywhere. There's stuff everywhere. My conservatory is a real mess right now, but I really wanted to film this video, and so I thought I would just sit in the one space that has a little bit of room in front of my bookshelf. So it's fine for you. I think you get a nice view of some different parts of my shelves that you don't get to normally see. Enjoy the blue and pink, but it does mean I'm sitting on the floor, so if I look like I'm at a weird angle, that is why. But today, as I said, I'm filming my March TBR. If you don't know, March is the final book support group hosted by Steph Love's read along for the whole month. So if you haven't heard of it, the idea of the final book support group is to encourage us readers who typically start series and don't finish them to either continue books or ideally to finish books in a series. So that's the real aim of it. And Steph usually hosts like a week or 48 hours, but for March, it's a whole month. And I feel like this works really well for me because sometimes I'm not free in the like weeks or the 48-hour ones. So a month-long one works really well. It also helps to really focus my reading for March. March is the busiest month of the year for me in my job, and so having a focused TBR I think will be really good. I'm not actually sure how much reading I'll get done, but I am away in hotels for several days in March, and so typically I do get reading done there even though things are busy. So I'm hoping I'm going to make a pretty good dent in the TBR that I've got in front of me, and I think that I really like the idea of it being finishing series or continuing series because I think that it will give me that sense of achievement when things are feeling a bit stressful at work. It will be nice to feel like I'm making really good progress through my series, and I've just been updating my series tracker this morning to give me an idea of what I want to put on this TBR. I just think it will really help give that kind of sense of achievement through the month. So I think it'll be really good. And also I'm probably going to enjoy these books. I think that's a really positive thing if I'm going to be having a difficult month. Realistically, these are all series where I have enjoyed the first book or the other books I've read in the series. So it will be really nice to hopefully read a month of really stellar reads because I haven't had a single 5-star so far. It's been very like 3 and 4 stars. I don't think I've had anything above a 4-star so far in 2023. I think I'm getting quite picky with my reading tastes, but hopefully this will see me with some 5-star reads, hopefully. So I have 12 books on this TBR. Steph does have a kind of series of different reading prompts that you can use. There are different cabins as part of the read along, so there are multiple, and you can watch Steph's video if you are interested in joining or want to see a little bit more about kind of which camp you could be in. Having had a read through the prompts, I think I've decided I'm going to be in the buzzard's beak because I think that I can really easily hit all of these. So the prompts on there are final book, use a letter generator, typography cover, paperback book, arts and crafts, that's the kind of non-reading prompt, and then go to the lookout, something beautiful and alluring. And arts and craft is a really easy non-reading prompt for me. I really like the one that has like go on a hike, but I don't think I'm going to achieve that in March. So arts and crafts I think is relatively easy because my other hobby is planning, which I would consider arts and crafts. So that's a pretty easy one. I think that I could probably easily hit that. And the others I think are all like relatively sensible based on the 12 books that I've chosen. The only one is the letter generator that I will need to see if I can make that work. But ultimately, I don't know that I'm going to hold myself too much to being in the cabins because ultimately I would just like to use the month to read as many books as I can to help me finish or continue series. So that's my ultimate goal for March. As I said, I have 12 books on this TBR, and some of them are continuing series, some of them are finishing series. So I don't think I could just focus on finishing series, as great as that would be. There are some continuing series I really need to get to this month, so I am kind of treating myself to a little bit of both and having finishing and continuing series as books on this TBR. So first up we have the only middle grade on this TBR, which is Like a Curse by Elle McNicholl. This is the sequel to Like a Charm, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through Like a Charm. It's taking me a little while to get through, which given it's a middle grade is a little bit embarrassing, but I have have read some other books in the meantime, I kind of pick it up, and I've got about 3 or 4 books on the go right now, which I do try not to do, but we are where we are. But this is the sequel. I picked this up literally just yesterday in Waterstones, but I thought it would be a really good option to pick up. These covers are so cute, aren't they? So I haven't read the blurb of this one because I don't want to spoil myself for the first one, but in Like a Charm, we follow Ramya, who has dyspraxia and really struggles with her identity because of that. As it stands, at least at the point that I'm reading to in the book, her parents seem to not really understand her. She feels really alone. She feels like she doesn't know anyone else who really understands the struggle. She doesn't get on well at school, and she feels like they just kind of almost categorize her into just kind of generic, having some kind of like learning or additional needs, rather than it being focused on how she could turn her dyspraxia into a positive thing. And she feels very alone in the world. So Ramya and her parents move to Edinburgh, and Ramya is at a new school and she's kind of struggling with that. And then she finds out her granddad, who is the kind of one person that she ever felt close to, but there was a big family fallout when she was young, based on something that happened that she was involved in. And her parents did not speak to her granddad again. She doesn't have a relationship with him, but her granddad dies and her parents don't go to the funeral, just Ramya goes. And she is given a business card by a stranger who kind of sets off this course of Ramya discovering that actually maybe there is more to her than she thinks. And there's this whole world for her to discover that will bring her closer to her granddad. I would call it a fantasy, and it's so interesting. It's really, really unique, I think, personally, in the world building that's happening. But I have so many questions about where the story is going, and I thought it was a standalone, which is ultimately why I picked it up. And as I say, I'm about 3/4 through, and I was like, I don't feel we're getting many answers here. Turns out that's because it's not a standalone. I think How to Train Your Gavin was saying it's at least a duology. So I kind of hope it's not going to go beyond that, because I can't believe I just started another series. But I thought I'll pick this up. Hopefully I will get to this. Would be really good to understand a little bit more about what's happening with Ramya's story. Then we get into the romances. So romance is always a weird one to think about in terms of series, because ultimately a lot of them you can read as a standalone, but I decided I would include them in this because ultimately the genre I read by far the most of is romance, and I am kind of counting these as being in series, so I thought I would include them. So first up we have Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellefleur. This edition is from Amazon and it's so beaten up and horrible, so I am actually sending it back, which is the second time that I've had to send this back, and I'm going to pick it up from Waterstones instead and hope that it will be better. Not that Waterstones books always come perfectly. The cover also feels different to Written in the Stars, and I don't really know why, but yeah, it's really damaged around here, and I'm likely to damage a book owning it, but I don't need it to come damaged. Anyway, so this is the second book. I do already own the third, which is Count Your Lucky Stars, so I owned first and third in this series, so I would really like to pick up the second one so that I could ideally finish the series out. And in the first book, which I read recently, in fact, this book will probably come out before I wrap that up, so here's a sneak peek for you. But in the first book, we have Darcy and Elle, and Elle is working with a guy called Brendan or Brandon, but I think it's Brendan. In fact, I can tell from here, Brendan is working with Brendan on a dating app, and she gets set up by him with his sister to go on a date, and I would call it kind of haters to lovers. Yeah, probably hate to love, or at least kind of along that track anyway. But they have a really disastrous first date, but then it's fake dating. Then they agree to fake date to benefit each other, and then it kind of goes on from there. And personally, fake dating is one of my favorite tropes, but I didn't particularly love Written in the Stars. I don't really know what it was about it. I think I just didn't really get on board with the characters, and yeah, I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, and I was so excited to read it because I love the cover, but unfortunately it wasn't quite for me. But I think that Hang the Moon will be a really interesting one because it focuses on Brendan, which is Darcy's brother, and Brendan is like a hopeless romantic, really loves love, and I think that I will hopefully love him. I really like him in the first one, and I think it's about him trying to court Darcy's like long-term best friend Anna or something like that, Annie. So yeah, I am interested to read this. And then Count Your Lucky Stars is focusing on Elle's best friend. So again, they kind of are a series in that the characters are connected. A lot of the first book feels like set up for book 2 and book 3, but yeah, so this one is about Brendan and Annie, but again, I'm kind of not going to read the blurbs of these too much. I'm kind of going into them based on the first books. So this is a continuation rather than a finishing the series, but if I finish this and felt I could carry on, I do own Count Your Lucky Stars already, so I could go straight in with that. Next up, we have Meet Me in Hawaii by Georgia Toffolo, and I don't know what she's from. I think Made in Chelsea, Georgia's Toff. And I own and have read the first one of this, which is Meet Me in London, which I spoke about in my December and January reading wrap up. And I don't think I should have enjoyed it as much as I did, but I did really like it. It's just my kind of romance story. It's very kind of the characters were really cute, and I kind of could get on board where that particular story went, even if it seemed a bit far-fetched at times. The writing wasn't perfect, but I just had a really good time reading it. And I actually already owned the second one, and I don't think I realised that this was the second in the series, but ideally it is. So, you know, it's great. Reading this in March, I think, is going to be a bit weird, and so this may not be one that I get to straight away, even though this is one of all the romance series that are on here, is one of the ones I enjoyed the most, but I'm not convinced I'll get to it because it is a very summary book, which ultimately is why I picked it up, and it was like £1 or £2 in the works or something like that. But basically this series, it's a series of 4, and it follows 4 friends who were involved in a big accident when they were younger, and that kind of ties them together for life. And it's about their sort of individual journeys of dealing with that, discovering themselves. They all have quite complicated home lives, and they're kind of discovering romance and figuring themselves out. It's darker than I thought it would be. And so this one is as I say, the second one, and it's following Marley. Zoe must be in one of the future books. But yeah, so I will pick this up potentially at some point, but I think this probably isn't the biggest priority of the books I have on this list. Next up, we have, I think, the romance that I probably most want to prioritize in this stack, because this would finish out the series. And this is The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. So this is the 3rd in the series. I read The Bride Test back in January, and it was in my December-January reading wrap-up. And I read The Kiss Quotient, I think, last August. I didn't love The Kiss Quotient, but I did really like The Bride Test, and so I would just really like to finish out this series. A lot of people have read this and said it broke them, so I'm a little bit concerned about how I'm going to cope with this. I'm not really sure I want to spend my month sobbing, but I would just... This would be so great. This is one of the few where I can actually finish out the series by reading this. So this one is following, and this is Quan. Okay, so with this story, we're following basically a set of like cousins or siblings. So in the second book, we followed Kai, and this is Quan, which is Kai's brother. Quan just seems, just in terms of what we know about him from the first 2 books, is a really like exciting and lovable personality, and so I think reading a book about him will be really lovely. So Quan is like a serial dater, and Anna has been broken up with by her boyfriend of 5 years, so she decides to go for a string of one-night stands. Enter Quan, but it ends up being more than that. So excited to read this. So yeah, this is probably one of my biggest priorities for this month. Next up, we have another book which will only get me partway through the series, but it is the most up-to-date book that's out because the 3rd one comes out later this year. That is Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake. I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care, probably also in August last year. There was a lot of romance books I read in that time, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's not my favourite thing I've ever read, and I felt a little bit like, oh, everyone on YouTube loves this story, and I didn't love it as much, but I did enjoy it enough, and I particularly want to see what happens with Astrid. I'm not going to talk about this particular book because I actually think the summary for this is a really big spoiler for the first one, but in the first book we have Delilah and Claire, and Delilah left Bright Falls when she was young because she just never felt like she fit in. She really didn't get on with her stepsister Astrid and her friends, and then she ends up being invited back when Astrid is getting married, and she's asked to come back and be the photographer, and it ends up kind of leading to some stuff with her and Claire. But this one is on Astrid, her stepsister, so I'm very excited to see what happens in this, because I just really want to see how Astrid's story progresses from the first to the second. So hopefully I will get to this one this month. Next up, we have the other romance that I think I'm most likely to read, and that is Exes and O's by Amy Lea. I don't know if this is the final of the series. Like, I don't know if it's just a duology or if there's going to be more. I feel like there is another character who was set up in the first book, and I wouldn't be surprised if the third one is about her, if there is a third one. But for now, I think this is the most up-to-date in the series, so because Exes and O's just very recently came out. So I just finished Set on You. That was the last book that I finished, so again, that will be in my February reading wrap-up. But basically, we follow Crystal, who is a curvy fitness influencer, and she ends up kind of being at the gym one day, and this really handsome guy steals her squat rack, and it's about her kind of like, you know, snippy battles with him, and that leading to something more. This book follows Tara, who is Crystal's sister, and Trevor, who is Scott in the first one's best friend. So this is a friends to lovers, and this story is basically, so in the first one you find out that Tara has been left by her fiance, or she's broke up with her fiance, but she loves love, she really wants to settle down, but she doesn't want to do online dating, and that is mentioned a few times in the first book. And so in this book, it's about her, I think, basically revisiting relationships with her exes to see if it can become anything, because she so badly doesn't want to do online dating, and Trevor helps her to do that. It sounds so cute. I'm so excited to read this. I enjoyed Set on You more than I was expecting, but this is the one I'm excited for. I basically read Set on You so I could read this, so I really hope and think I will get to this one in March. Next up, we have, I think there are only 2 in this series, or at least this is the most up-to-date one, but this is The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan, and I read The Roommate in January, and when I picked this up, I didn't know that it was the sequel to the other book. I just picked them both up because they were in a deal at the works, so yay me for picking up another series. So in the first one, we follow Clara and Josh, and Clara basically moves to be with her, like, basically her long-term crush. He immediately moves out and leaves her to live with this other random guy, this random housemate, which is Josh. And for various reasons, again, I talk about this more in my January wrap-up, but for various reasons, they end up setting up a how to please a woman website, effectively, because Josh is a sex worker and he is on a bit of a hiatus, and so him and Clara set up this website, and they do that with the help of Josh's ex, Naomi. And in this book, we have Naomi, who at the end of the first book, we're kind of getting to like the success of the website launching. And so this book is kind of following on from that, Naomi dealing with the success of it. And then we also have Ethan. I don't know how he comes into the story, but Ethan is a rabbi of a synagogue, but he's really struggling for funds. So he ends up kind of coming up with some partnership with Naomi linked to the website. I'm interested to see where this one goes. The first book is one of the steamiest books I've ever read, and given that Naomi is also a sex worker, I think it's probably going to be pretty equal in this book, so I'm interested to see how that goes. I enjoyed The Roommate. It was a good time. I originally rated it 4 stars, but I dropped it to 3.5 because I think that for whatever reason, I was just kind of misjudging it, so we'll see. But yeah, so I think this is probably a duology, and so that would be great if it was, because then I could finish this one out. Then we have the last romance on this list, which I feel like is the book I've spoken about most on my channel, which is Husband Material by Alexis Hall. This is the sequel to Boyfriend Material, which was one of my favourite books of 2022. I absolutely loved it. We follow Luke and Oliver, and Luke is really struggling with his identity. He has a really difficult relationship with his dad. His dad is making a comeback in his life, and Luke is kind of so pissed off about this that he ends up having a load of like really messy one-night stands, gets a lot of negative press in the media, and the charity that he works for has loads of donors that basically say, until you sort your life out, we're not going to be donating anymore. So his best friend suggests that he tries to reform his image publicly by getting with somebody who would up his image. So she recommends her other friend, Oliver, who is a barrister. And so it's a fake dating trope, but it's so well done. The mental health rep is outstanding. It is so funny. I barely laugh out loud at books, but I was laughing so much in Boyfriend Material. I really loved it. And I'm so scared about reading this. I'm so scared because I love Boyfriend Material so much, and I don't know that I needed a sequel to that story, and so I'm kind of wary of like how is this going to live up to it? But I have to trust that Alexis Hall knows what he's doing. So I do need to try and get to this one this month. This is, I think, the second in a series of 4, but I think this is the one that's out at the moment. But I think looking on Goodreads, there are going to be 2 more. So again, this wouldn't be finishing out a series, which most of this isn't. It's just getting me further along the series, which would still be positive. Because I do have a lot of series I need to start, but I feel like I don't want to start more until I'm at least further away along in some of them. So next up, we have 2 fantasy books, although the first of these I would consider a fantasy romance. So the first up, we have Blood and Honey by Shelby, Mahurin. And I read the first one, Serpent and Dove, in March last year, so I feel like it would be really poetic if I could read this one this year, because I read that one while I was doing my various hotel stays, and I will be doing those hotel stays again, and I vlogged that experience, and so I feel like it would be kind of fun to vlog doing this again. So I do think I will try and get to this one, because also I think if I don't, I will just DNF it, and I would like to see what happens in this one. Basically, in Serpent and Dove, we have Libby and a name beginning with R, who I don't remember. Does it say on here? Oh, it's not Libby, it's Lou. Lou and Reed. So from what I remember, I might need to read a bit of a synopsis of the first one, but basically Lou and Reed end up being married, and Reed, and it's a hate love, but they basically end up married, and I can't remember why that was, and they end up falling in love by the end. The last chapter, or the last few chapters of Serpent and Dove, the story just ramped up. It was like reading a different book. The whole rest of the book had felt like a kind of angsty romance, and then we got a lot of plot in the last few pages. I really am going to have to read a synopsis, I think. This is not one that stayed with me in the year. And I didn't love Serpent and Dove. You can watch my vlog where I spoke about it, but I felt it was slightly bizarre. There was some kind of odd writing choices at various points, but I already own Blood and Honey, so I feel like I may as well at least read the second one, and then God and Monsters is the third one. This is so chunky though, which is what's put me off, because I'm not really a chunky book reader, and there's another chunky book on this list which I'm more excited to read. So we'll see if I get to this, but I do feel like if I don't get to it, I'm done with it, and I think I'm intrigued enough to at least attempt to read the second book in the series. The other fantasy, which I don't think should be any surprise, is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. I love this series so much. I've spoken about it so many times on my channel. I gave both the first and the second book in this series 5 stars. This series, I mean, if you haven't heard of it, I mean, you should definitely read it. It's so good. Even if you think you don't like fantasy, or you're really intimidated by fantasy, this was the first fantasy series I picked up when I came back into reading, and it's just so good. I cannot recommend it enough. But we follow 2 clan families that are competing for control of the place that they live in, called Janloon, and their whole kind of clan outlook is, and a lot of the kind of politics around where they live, is all based around the substance Jade, because Jade enhances martial arts ability, and so a lot of the fight is about the control of Jade. It's so good. I mean, Fonda Lee's writing is outstanding. She doesn't care about killing characters you love midway through a story. I was so shocked by some of it. The second book, we go over a huge time span, and it's still so fantastic. I really love it. I can't recommend it enough. And Jade Legacy is the final one. And I've said it before, but I just don't really want to be at a time where I'm not reading this. I feel like I almost don't want it to end, but I obviously want to know what happens. And so I think maybe it's time that I get to Jade Legacy. Also, because until I finish Jade Legacy, I'm not starting any other new fantasy series, and I own quite a lot. I would particularly like to start reading Brandon Sanderson, but I'm also feel like I'm getting to a point where I would really like to read The Poppy War, and I don't feel I can do that while I'm in the middle of the Greenbone saga, which is kind of silly, but it's just a thing. So it would be great if I could get to this, but I don't feel that this is achievable on top of all those romances. Like, romances are a much quicker read for me. So we'll see. I don't really know, because also I would always plan to finish this series out. Whereas if I don't read this, I'm not sure I will read it. So we'll see what happens. Last up, I have 2 graphic novel series that I am in the middle of. Yeah, neither of these are final books, unfortunately. But the first one is Fence Volume 4. I don't own Fence Volume 5, but I think I will buy it because I really love this series. And I think Volume 5 is the end of the series, though I don't know whether there's any plans to carry it on. It switched to some novels as well, and I don't really know whether novels come into this story. So I'm kind of unsure about what order I'm supposed to read this in, which is part of why I haven't read any more. But basically in this series, we follow basically a group of students who are at an elite fencing school. And it's about the sort of challenges of dealing with being teenagers competing with each other, on top of a lot of them having feelings for each other, on top of some quite complicated life circumstances for some of our characters. It's great. I think it's really great. I think if you like Heartstopper, this has a little bit more tension in it than Heartstopper, but it gives me very similar vibes, and it's been recommended by other people as being something that if you like Heartstopper, you'll like this. And the students are all so cute. The art style is stunning. They are very quick reads because they are so short. There is no excuse as to why I haven't read this. Honestly, I think the only reason is I'm not sure whether novels come into the series, and so I had kind of stopped reading. But I really love this series, and it would be really easy win to carry on with this. So yeah, I think I will hopefully at least read Volume 4, and I've got Volume 5 in my Waterstones basket right now, so I probably will also read Volume 5. And last but not least, we have another continuation, and then I do own the third one as well, which is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. So this is basically a Hades and Persephone retelling. I don't massively remember what happened in Volume 1. We basically meet Hades and Persephone. That's really what I remember, but I think it's mostly just Volume 1 is quite a slow moving series, and I think basically in Volume 1 we're mostly just following Hades and Persephone meeting, and Hades feeling quite complicated about how he deals with that. And so I think I'll be fine. I don't think I need to reread it. I mean, it would be relatively quick if I did want to reread it, but yeah, I own Volume 2 and I own Volume 3, and there are many more series to come. So, you know, it would just be good to get caught up with this. It's also an easy win in terms of my Goodreads goal because it's quite a short book. So again, it's one of those where there's kind of no excuse that I haven't read it. And that's it. That's my March TBR. So those are the 12 books I'm most hoping to get to in March. I am a mood reader, and so it is quite easy for me to to just pick up whatever I want to read, and so I don't hold myself too closely to my TBRs, but I think this is a TBR that I would very much enjoy reading. Another book that I actually would like to read is the second book in the Front Desk series from Kelly Yang, but I don't own that yet, but it is in my Waterstones basket. I feel like if that came, I might read that as well, or instead of one of these books. But yeah, I'm not going to hold myself too tight to it, but I think that, and also 12 books would be very much at the top end of what I can read in a month, though 2 of these are graphic novels, though 2 of them are like 800-page books, so I don't know, we'll see. So in terms of the prompts in the final book support group, so one of the things I need to do is use a letter generator to see if I can get one of these on my TBR in that sense. So let me just find a letter generator. So I found a letter generator here. So it's currently on the letter L. So let's click generate a random letter and see what it comes up with. A. Okay, it's given us A. So I don't ever really know with a random generator. Like, I think that Steph is quite flexible on how you include it. So I need to sort of have a look through. Maybe it's like the author's name, or maybe one of the like words in the title has an A and like starts with an A. Ah, perfect. Astrid Parker. I think that that's a really good option, right? Because A for Astrid. So Astrid Parker for the letter generator. Let me go back to the post. So that was the main one that I was worried about. So in terms of the other prompts, so one is a typography cover. I feel like Jade Legacy is a good fit for that because I think typography is linked to words, right? And this is very word heavy because the words are like most of the cover. So I think Jade Legacy would be a really good fit for that, but as is Blood and Honey. So again, the interchangeable big books kind of work for that. Then I also have paperback book, which is everything on this TBR other than Lore Olympus, so that's quite easy. One of them is final book, so I think I am going to put The Heart Principle in there because I would really like to finish out this series, and that one is definitely a final book. And then one is Something Beautiful and Alluring, and I feel like Lore Olympus is perfect for that because the art in this is beautiful, and that kind of alluring I think leads to like a story of really like pining love, which is what Lore Olympus is. So I think Lore Olympus is a really good fit for that. So that would mean the other one is just paperback. So I think I might put Exes and O on there because I feel like I'm very into reading this. I feel like it would either be this or like maybe like a Charmed sequel, but then I haven't read I haven't actually technically finished the first one. So I'm going to go with Exes and O. So that would be final, well, let me show you. So I guess if I wasn't going to read all the 12 books on this TBR, which let's face it, would probably be unrealistic, the ones that I should maybe most prioritize is for final book, The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. For user ledger generator, we got A, so Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by, oh, and Ashley Herring Blake, double A. Perfect. So Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake. For typography cover, it's either Jade Legacy or Blood and Honey, depending on which one I decide I'm going to prioritize in the month. So paperback book would then be Exes and O's by Amy Lea. Arts and crafts is then the like non-reading thing you do. So for me, that would probably be doing my planning activities because ultimately I consider that arts and craft. And then go to the lookout, Something Beautiful and Alluring would be Lore Olympus. I'm really happy with that. I think that that works really well. And that gets the books that I most want to prioritize on this TBR. So I think I picked a really good option by being in Buzzard Speak. So this is basically my top priorities for March, and then the other books would be the other series or continuations that I would like to get to. So that is everything for this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below and let me know what you're planning to read at March. If you're taking part in Final Book Support Group, I would also love to know what cabin you're going to be in, or just any books that you would love to prioritize in the month. Please let me know. Also, if it's from a series that I haven't read yet, please feel free to convince me to add it to my TBR. I'm so easily swayed. So please go ahead and try and convince me to read it. If you did enjoy this video, I would really appreciate a like, and if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. I will also have links in the description to anything I've mentioned in this video, so such as like Steph Loves' intro video about Final Book Support Group, so do make sure you check that out. I'll also have a link to my Goodreads. If you ever want to see most up-to-date what I'm reading, Goodreads is always the best way because I write my reviews pretty much straight away, so it's always good to follow me over there or become my friend so you can see what I'm up to. I'll also have a link to my planning YouTube if you want to check out anything that I do over there, as well as my Instagram, which I share between my planning and book content. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!